So my name is David Chiesa. I am your moderator for today. I'm the Senior Director for Global Business Development with S&C Electric Company. And as part of that, I get to interact with all kinds of different types of utility players in the marketplace. I deal with developers, I deal with utilities, municipalities, co-ops, other suppliers, all kinds of different things. And one of the things that I've noticed, and then I brought up with my fellow panel mates here, is that throughout the industry, we use all these different terms. And these different terms and acronyms and all these things that mean something, mean a lot to the person using them. But when you're on the other end of the term and you have no idea what it is, it feels a little disconcerting. You get a little lost with what's going on. More importantly, we're always trying to take care of our customers. And our customers have no idea what some of these things mean either. And so what we wanted to do today is kind of, at the same time that we talk about why you want to do certain things, we want to help actually clarify some of the jargon mythology that is out there. So here's what you guys have to do for us today. Okay, so you have a part in all this. Anytime we use jargon, okay, you get to make some kind of noise, hopefully appropriate, and point at the offending panel member that used the jargon, and they are required to explain the jargon. Okay, so in this case, there's no embarrassment. There's no this, oh gee, they used the word flizzer. I'm supposed to know what that means, but I don't. So in this case, you are empowered to actually ask the panel members, and you're required to ask them about these different jargon items. Now, the other part of it is, we also want you to bring up jargon that you don't know what it means. So everything that you've heard as we're talking about, and there's been a lot of great panel discussions as part of this event. Anybody that's used some type of jargon that you didn't know what it meant, but it sounded really important, you have an opportunity to ask the panel members as well. Now, the other thing that you may have noticed is that there's 26 sheets of white paper over on the side. So if at any point it starts to get a little dull, what we'll do, and I don't know that will happen, but what we'll do is we'll have our panel members go over there and draw 6 letters, right? And the requirement will be that from the 6 letters, they have to make up either real or imagined industry jargon terms. And you guys will have to guess, are they real or are they imagined industry terms? It's a little like advanced Scrabble for engineers. So we'll do that. But what I wanted to start off with is we have a fantastic panel for you here today, some really knowledgeable, really expert people that can answer these questions for us. And I want to start by allowing them to introduce themselves. And we're going to start with Jamie immediately to my right, your left.
Thank you. I'm Jamie Statter. I am the Vice President for Strategic Relationships at the U.S. Green Building Council. The acronym for that is USGBC.
Did you see how she already avoided using the acronym? That's good. That's good. All right.
I sit a little bit outside the typical person on this panel in that I represent a nonprofit that's trying to break down these jargony words by creating definitions around things like microgrids, smart grids, et cetera, through standards, metrics, and certification system modeled after the LEED green building rating system.
Hello, there we go. Come on, let's go.
I wasn't a gimme. I was just seeing if everyone was awake.
Evidently they weren't, but this microphone's so loud that they are now.
Should I define it?
Of course. That's the whole point.
So LEED is the premier certification system for buildings around the world that want to demonstrate leadership around sustainability in terms of energy, water, waste, human experience. It's operational in 180 countries. I'm sure many of you know what it is, but those of you that don't, now you do, and I will pass to my right.
Hello, my name is Alex Frohs. I am Director of Distributed Technologies at Ameren. I'm new to Ameren. I spent over 20 years as in technical roles in employers such as General Electric, ABB, which is ASEA Brown and Burberry, and Siemens. I'm glad to be in this panel.
And I am Brad Hicks, the Vice President of Engineering and Energy Innovations for Puerto Electric Co-op, which is based out of Johnson City, Texas. We are a member-owned electric co-op here in the Hill Country of Texas. And again, I appreciate being asked to be a part of this panel.
Good afternoon, Michael Quinn, Vice President and CTO.
Come on, guys.
Chief Technology Officer for Oncor Electric Delivery. And thank you, Mr. Chiesa, for getting us involved in this.
Oh, it's my pleasure. So look, you guys have already failed me as panelists. As you remember, when we rehearsed this, you were supposed to talk about your favorite hobby as well, right? To provide a little personal interest. So why don't we quick go through the hobbyists?
I like to watch baseball. David and I talk about that quite a bit, so I figured I'd throw that one out for him.
Acoustic guitar. Anybody who wants to do an Eagles band or something like that with me?
At once upon a time, I did have a hobby. I have several children now, so my children are my hobbies.
So David, my hobby is actually cooking. And so got invited one time to go do a panel up in Chicago where SNC's from. And they invited me to do the panel not because they wanted me on the panel. They wanted me to be in a cook-off later that night in a Bobby Flay style throwdown. So tell your sister I can't come.
That's actually true. It was going to be the Quinn Pot Pie Challenge. So, all right, great. Well, look, we're going to start off with distribution automation. Distribution automation is one of those things that we talk a lot about. It can be referred to as a lot of different things. It can be self-healing networks. It can be automated restoration, any number of different things. And so the first thing, one of the ones that we always talk about is ADMS. Now, you don't have to buzz me, because the whole point is I want to get the panelists to talk about ADMS, DMS, and OMS in their own words. Right? So this should be an interesting one, and we're going to start.
ADMS, didn't they open up for Wiz Khalifa last year?
If I knew who Wiz Khalifa was, I might agree with you.
Is everybody learning something here today?
All right, so who wants to start off with ADMS? Don't everybody talk at once.
Not I.
I'll begin.
All right, good.
So an ADMS, and again, it varies from utility to utility, but with the organization that I'm with, what an ADMS would mean to our group would be a consolidation of all the independent software packages that we have in place, whether it's your supervisor control and data acquisition. I did not say SCADA, by the way, or your automated vehicle location tool, or your outage management system, or your
This is harder than it looks, isn't it?
It is. I mean,
It's
I
really
keep
hard.
wanting to use the acronyms, but I keep catching myself. It's basically a consolidation of all these applications that rolls up into an interface that allows the end user to make multiple decisions at single points of clicks, if you would. In our organization, we have not fully deployed an ADMS. However, we are integrating with our engineering software package, our electrical model, and our outage management system, as well as the vehicle location tool, and bringing those into a centralized repository to make the experience for our employees and the employees in the field that are responding to outages more user-friendly.
And what is the impact to the customer? Because that's what we always care about here. So an ADMS, which we can use because we have defined, a DMS or an OMS, how does that impact? How does it impact and improve the customer experience? So somebody other than Brad this time.
Go ahead.
So, yes, the customer would benefit from increased reliability and increased resiliency, among other benefits. By reliability, we mean how little is energy unavailable at a customer's premise. By resiliency, it means the system's ability to recover from fault or storm or some other situation. So these automated systems that involve, go ahead.
No, you're good. Keep going.
Yeah, they involve actually, and I'll just complement with a description of what they are. They involve a group of sensors, a group telemetry as well, algorithms at a central or distributed location. They're really complex systems around which utilities have to work with interoperability, so that they will talk to each other and interoperate to achieve specific use cases.
Okay, great.
So I just want to add something there, which is from where I sit, while these are highly technical and jargon words, the other words that I see being very jargony are reliability and resiliency on their own, which is, as a nonprofit person in Washington, D.C., I hear the word resiliency probably 19 times a day. And what I find interesting about what you all talk about is how specific technologies that might, or solutions that might sound jargony to you, to me sounds like definitional of resiliency or reliability. So there's that kind of overlap that we've found when we were speaking about this previously.
And I think that's a great point. I mean, we kind of take for granted in our industry, well, everybody knows what resiliency, you know, and we're really just talking about, from a customer's perspective, the ability to either withstand an event or recover from the event. That's in its basic format when we think about resiliency.
Okay, good. So, customer question, you know, i.e. our customers in this case are you, the attendees. So, any customer questions here? Anything from the audience? All right, I'm going to ask that a lot, so get used to it. Oh, wait, there we go. Hold on.
We had ADMS, but I missed the DMS and the OMS.
The
She's
DMS
right.
and the OMS were missed.
OMS is outage management system,
DMS?
distribution management system, and that's what we talk about, ADMS. So, all right, so I'm an engineer, so we break everything down to formulas. So if you have 4 letters in a row and it's talking about software, that's a platform in our world, right? And so a platform says, I'm going to take information, all the information I get from all these different systems, and utilize it to make decisions. So 4 letters, software equals platform.
What do you say to that? All right,
That
good,
really breaks
good.
it down.
Okay, so good. Let me bring up another term which I brought up earlier called flizzer. Right? So I know Michael has a great affinity for this term, so I'll let him start.
Yes, it's the dessert that I usually get at Dairy Queen. I love the flizzer.
All right. Anybody want to take a serious stab at it?
Oh, blizzard, sorry. Sorry.
It was close.
Yeah.
It was close.
Fault location, isolation, and source restoration.
Okay,
All
now
right.
for the layman's definition
There
of
you
what
go.
that meant.
That means we have an event and we want to try and minimize the operator activities, so we want it to be automatic. And so another term we'll use that's much more obvious is self-healing, if it's a self-healing type situation. So you want to try and integrate as much automation into your network as you can. That way, when the event happens, there's automatic response rather than trying to sort through all the details and go, okay, that's the switch I need done.
All right, and it means to customers what?
Well, for me, again, representing the customer perspective here, this seems to be pretty straightforward because you live it all the time, right? A bird flies into a power line, it doesn't take down the entire neighborhood. You're able to isolate that particular area and then put it back online. Am I right about that?
Yes.
So that's meaningful to me as someone who relies on electricity.
So smaller number of outages, quicker restoration.
All right, good. Customer question from the audience here? Anybody?
Can you repeat the acronyms that fault location?
Isolation and source restoration.
Blizzard.
Yeah, Flizzard. I mean, we are awesome as an industry about the ability to complicate or make a complex acronym. We'll get to that here in a minute.
So that's a 5-letter acronym.
I know, I can't wait for a 6.
I can,
I'm all giddy.
I can add to the
Go ahead, Alex.
confusion. At GE, we developed a synonym to the acronym, and that is FDIR, Fault Detection, Isolation, and Reconfiguration.
And it
which
means
is the-
exactly the same
Yeah,
thing.
It's the same thing, but different acronym.
You got to love that. See, that's what makes our industry special right there.
And
right?
David, you take that you go to do a request for a proposal, RFP, on a piece of software, right? And you know, as a person getting that RFP response back, I'm reading that and go, okay, they have a flizzer, they have, what was the term?
FDIR.
FDIR, right? And I'm like, am I getting the equivalent
Right, and someone else would
capability?
have a self-healing application.
Yeah,
And it
absolutely.
would all mean the same kind of thing.
So yes, so we're clearly blaming the vendor community.
Very good. Very good. I like how you did that. All right. So look, that's one area of jargon. I have one more question in this area of jargon before we move on to energy storage jargon. Does anybody want to ask an additional question here? Because as we look at it, I'm already 1/3 the panel and only 1/4 through my questions. So the question was, what's the acronym for the dictionary of acronyms in this field?
SG Glossary or SG Dictionary. SG for Smart Grid.
And that exists where?
Internet, Google it, you'll find NIST.gov, OneSource, and many others.
AMO at my office.
At my office. Got it. Okay, good. And you had a question? Was there? Here you go.
Is Flizzr an add-on to an ADMS, or does it tend to be native capability?
Go ahead.
I think it would depend on the utility. Typically, it is going to be part of an ADMS. It is a platform, if you would, that is deployed. In a ideal scenario, it is going to be part of your ADMS.
The concept of system comes to mind because the same sensors you would use for OMS, DMS, and other acronyms that were spelled just a while ago, you would use for Blizzard. So a smart meter is a very important sensor in achieving the same goals.
We'll get to you next, but we had a question over here.
So what does advanced mean for you in ADMS?
Whenever I hear advanced, I'll start easy. Whenever I hear advanced, I assume it means integrating IT infrastructure at the highest possible levels.
I agree with that, because originally, distribution management system, it was the software system that a distribution operating center employee would use to open and close a switch or operate a breaker, right? But now you've integrated information, whether it's from an outage management system, a meter, a distribution automation switch. So you've got a cornucopia, there you go, challenge me on that one, cornucopia of data that comes in that ideally you're making better and quicker decisions on.
And I would add that in many scenarios, the advance would come into play because these Flizzr systems, they do not, in many cases, require human inputs. So the intelligence is programmed within the devices to enable them to make decisions with no human input. So.
And the truth of the matter is, the reason there's so many of these acronyms is that there's different solutions for different systems, and that everyone has, there's no silver bullet. So we have created all these terms to describe things that are relatively similar but not exactly the same.
And the only other one, I mean, it's been talked about, most utilities make a investment in, whether it's an outage management system or distribution management system or whatever the software piece is, and then they may recognize, pick a timeline, 5 years, 7 years down, hey, that feature set would have been good to have also. How do we bring that into that situation? Because we try and make purchases for the long haul, right? And so that, you know, our customers aren't going to be happy if we every 6 years say, well, we need to scrap that entire software package. Now we need another $100 million software package. We try and figure out, okay, what do we need? But as we develop and as the expectation on us continues to evolve, we have to bring in additional functionality. So that's where I think the advanced part comes.
Having marketed these technologies for over 20 years, there's more cynicism in me. And I'll tell you why. Advance is another way to package to charge more to the customers as you're a vendor. So as a matter of fact, and also it's used internally. Often when they couldn't give me a raise, I got in my title, advanced something, advanced technology. So it made me feel good for a year.
So now you know.
Yeah.
Whole other meaning.
You have additional responsibility and no more cash. You are advanced.
All right, so we had another question. Good.
Yeah, so some more acronyms, I thought. The way utilities measure reliability and resiliency, so we keep hearing about Sadie and Katy. So can you talk a little bit about that and what the benchmarks are and sort of what's good in terms of Sadie and Katy that we keep hearing about?
So I'll take the easy one. Let me go Sadie, right? System Average Interruption Duration Index. So we think of it as our average customer, what was the duration of outage they had on an annual basis, right? So there's Sadie, there's Safety, there's Katy, but so D is the duration. And so in Texas, the best utilities in Texas are running about 65 minutes annually, and dependent upon infrastructure.
What do you mean 65 minutes annually?
So, great point. So there, if you took the totality of all their customers, and let's just say they had 100 customers, right? And each of those customers would have experienced 65 minutes of outage time. There's a different metric
In
for
1
the
year, right?
frequency or.
That's annually, so in 1 year.
Yes. So I'd say in Texas specifically, 65 to about a 110, 115 numbers where you're gonna move around.
But we've noticed, and this is, you should make this point, it's your point, I'm gonna steal it.
No, go for it. Go for it. You're the panelist. I'm the moderator.
That Sadie and Safi are not necessarily the same depending on where you are geographically located. So even though it's an index meant to compare across different systems, they're not indexed correctly. Did I get that right?
Yes. Yeah. There are different.
I stole his points.
Different things that qualify. And Brad and I, we were talking about this the other day. So you want to elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. Me being with a electric co-op, the service territory that we serve is vastly different than, maybe Oncor in the Dallas area or a CPS or even Austin Energy in the city of Austin. So we serve 8,200 square miles and we have about 700 employees. So our Sadie for 2016 was 63 minutes. We compare. There is the National Electric Cooperative Association in Arlington, Virginia, which is a trade association. Excuse me.
That was a nice definition of a acronym, by the way.
Yeah, that was
Nika. That was good.
If you're in the Washington area, it's called NRECA.
Right. Yep. NRECA.
That's right. So
Congress hasn't been in RECA for a long.
yeah, exactly.
We have our own set of acronyms
They said
in
if you could use it
Washington.
as a sentence, then it's a real word.
That's right. We did hear that at lunch.
That's a real
That's true.
word then. So they have a reporting mechanism for all the electric co-ops, the 900 plus in the United States, and they have a balanced scorecard. So we will report annually and see what that metric, if you would, with Sadie reliability is. In 2015, they have not updated the numbers for 2016, but the average in 2015 was 119 minutes. So for Perdonalis to cover the service territory that we do, we have phenomenal reliability when it comes to Sadie. But you're very correct in your observation. Utilities they have different qualifying events, if you would, that typically will get excluded from those numbers. So you really have to dive into the numbers to truly evaluate one utility to another.
Or you find systems that normalize it, which is what we're trying to do across the board as well.
Right.
That normalize it regardless. Everybody's reporting the same thing, regardless of system design, et cetera.
And there's lots of versions of this. So we just concentrated on Sadie, but there's also SAFE, which changes the D to an F. There's MAFE, and others as well. You guys want to take a stab at all the general ones there?
I'll mention SAFE, System Average Interruption Frequency Index, where my peer here was discussing the duration. The frequency is how often each member, consumer, if you would, has an interruption, a recordable interruption. In our case, it would be anything greater than 5 minutes. So momentary interruptions, which I'm sure everyone in this room has experienced a momentary. It's basically when you have to reset your clocks. You come home, your clock's blinking, your power may have just blinked and came back on. Those are not included in that number. It has to be a sustained outage that it would exceed 5 minutes.
But David, I think an important point, as an industry, I think even though we've got standard terminology and standard definition, one of the things that if you participated at all this week, there was definitely a focus on the customer, right? And so although that definition, whether it's 1 minute, 5 minutes, or whatever, that's not the customer experience, right? The customer experience is any interruption, right? Regardless of duration. If it caused me, an annoyance because it shut down my computer or created my DVR or whatever it was, I'm not happy about it. Mm-hmm. And so to start getting away from the jargon-esque and the hard definition and try and see it through the customer's lens of, did we give them what they expected all the time and at the price they were anticipating? That's really what the metric we need to be measuring against.
All right, here. I'm all in favor of that one. Good. Questions from the audience, or we're going to move on from, whoop, all right, David?
So you can help me with my consulting dollars here, because I could not answer this question asked by a senior Army executive last week, because I could tell her Sadie, and she turned around to me and said, "What the heck are you talking about? Would you just tell me? The sky is falling, the sky is falling. All this solar we're putting out there, it's making everything worse. There's more interruptions." Are there? When you guys are out there, are you actually seeing any impact globally across the US? Because I searched for hours, and there's nothing except an LBL report that takes a PhD to read, and telling people what's actually going on, that we're spending all these billions of dollars on protecting against going worse reliability.
Absolutely. The answer is Hawaii. In voltage regulation issues down their feeders, to a point that in 2014 they stopped issuing permits for more single-phase solar small inverters. Operational nightmare from a voltage a regulation perspective. And it's a good example, and I use that as a beacon for some of my peer utilities to start thinking of smart inverters or other technologies that will help us not get into what Hawaii happened.
You guys aren't paying attention. He said smart inverters. Anybody know what that means? That's kind of jargony, isn't it?
I can define it.
Go for it.
It's an inverter that has the capability of being programmed to behave in certain ways given voltage variations and other system variations. That's a smart inverter. Where dumb inverters are those that just were programmed once at the factory and never touched again. Yes.
Okay. And David, you were specifically asking, can you quantify the impact on solar in any way? Was that the basis of the question? What DERs? Okay, so DER, anybody? Hello? You guys aren't paying attention. Come on now, let's go. So DERs. You guys want to define DERs, and I know, Brad, you actually have a program to introduce DERs in your service territory. You want to talk about how you manage that, and then what they are, of course?
Well, it's the response is easy right now, but there is no management because it's not in place yet. So thank you. No, we did win a grant for a battery storage project, and we had been evaluating the technology, and financially it did not pencil out to produce a positive benefit for our membership. And we do not have investors. We have members that are owners, so all the decisions that we try to make are in the best interest of our membership, hopefully in a positive financial position. So we were awarded the grant. We're currently in the RFP phase of that. So there's not a lot of details I can share at this point, but we do look at it as a mechanism to benefit in our transmission cost of service, and hopefully some type of peak reduction during the 4 CPs.
There we go. All right. Somebody's paying attention.
So the 4 CPs here in Texas in the ERCOT market is the 4 coincident peaks that utilities chase during the summer, which is June, July, August, and September, where our transmission costs are based off of those peaks that are set within a 15-minute interval each of those 4 months. It's a socialized cost, so whatever your peak is in regards to the ERCOT peak, that is the percent that you're going to be paying the following year. So, so when you talk about storage, we are actively monitoring our peak during the 4 CP, and that was one of the driving factors for us going after this potential grant.
All right, so even I am immune because I was listening and I didn't even notice it. Which one did you catch?
Sorry, no, I was on the CP.
Oh, you're still on the CP
We
thing.
still
Okay,
had
coincident peaks. And then we had ERCOT. You mentioned that, and then I still don't think you actually defined the DER. I think you skipped over that.
Distributed energy resource.
All right, good. Okay. And
My apologies.
ERCOT?
Electric Reliability Council of Texas.
And they do what?
They are the, see, you're putting me on the spot. I've been
I-
in
well,
Texas for 3 years.
You're doing great, Brad.
ISO, or the ISO.
So they would oversee the electric grid, the bulk electric grid.
Right.
They would be the entity that would determine which generation would come on at what time.
Okay, great.
Independent system operator, ISO, the acronym.
Good. So in other parts of the country, ERCOT is equivalent to New York ISO, Cal ISO, which is the New York version of that, the California version of that. There's others, MISO for the Mid-American and others. So, okay, good. You actually, Brad, you gave us a nice transition over to energy storage. One of the things that, as we were talking about the panel beforehand, when we were doing our rehearsal, we were talking about RFP to install, and that's a request for proposal to install. What does energy storage look like during that process? And everybody on the panel has some level of experience with energy storage, and so it's a great opportunity to discuss some of those things associated with it. So, Michael, this was one of the ones that you brought up as we were starting out. So, you want to talk to a little bit about the jargon and acronyms associated with energy storage as you make that progression?
Okay, so energy storage, they were talking about it earlier with the Tesla Powerwall. That's something that's about the same size as a refrigerator, right? But then they get larger installations that can be semi-trucks full of batteries, or they can be, a facility as big as the room. And so it depends how much energy and for what duration you want. That determines the size of it. And the other one is there's about 27 different chemistries out there right now in just the lithium ion world. I'm a lithium titanate person. Well, I mean, our customers don't care if you use lithium titanate or you're a zinc bromide. They want to know, how's this going to benefit me? And the way we look at it is, and we've got 5 energy storage units installed in the Dallas area, and as an event has occurred, that energy storage has picked up those homes that were served by that energy storage, and so far we've been able to have people not experience 2,300 minutes of outage that they normally would have. And so we can get wrapped around the axle on chemistries and size and megawatts, or is that megawatt hours, and all the jargon, but ultimately, are we using it to help customers, and how are we utilizing it to help customers?
Great. Alex, because you guys are in the process of installing some energy storage.
Yes, sir. Let me take the opportunity to tie a couple of topics together. I mentioned Hawaii. Let me mention Puerto Rico as an example of a solution that they found there. They're requesting that for every kilowatt hour of solar production, there be a matching portion of energy storage. So the way they're handling the intermittency and the way they're handling not going into the operational problems you've seen in Hawaii is by forcing applicants that want to install solar to have energy storage. Local, up their feeder, whatever they can, there's a requirement for that. So it's an example of how you can tie. It shows you how energy storage can be an enabler for managing the intermittency from non-dispatchable sources such as wind and solar.
So I can break that down from sort of the laywoman term perspective. I would like to put my parents' house into 100% renewable energy by installing solar panels on their roof, and my sister, who has no experience in this space, tells me, but they won't have power when it's dark out. And I say, that is why you have storage. So, we talk about intermittencies. That is in and of itself a little bit jargony, but what we mean is you have power all the time when you are reliant on things that are not fossil fuels.
I don't want to hijack the whole meeting, but anybody want to come?
Yeah. I would only offer that on a much smaller scale, some of the applications that we've used to storage for some of our members is actually for capital deferral. It was actually a situation where
Capital deferral means what?
Capital deferral of what our member would have to pay to extend the line to serve their facilities.
Okay, good.
So In one particular situation, in a very rural part of our service territory, it would have been several $100,000s to extend a line to serve the load, and it was driven by motor load is what we were trying to serve. So we actually developed and had it manufactured a portable storage unit that was charged off of photovoltaic solar panels. And that was the soft start. That was what assisted those motors to start, which eliminated us from having to extend those distribution lines to serve that customer. So there was a capital deferral of expenses associated to that member. That's, it's a different application, but I think what it shows is there are multiple applications that storage can apply to.
Good, and that actually is a decent transition to the next topic that we're going to talk about. But before I do that, we only have 10 minutes left, and so I just wanted to make sure that we're covering jargon that you guys are interested in here in our customers, which are the audience. So are there any other jargony terms that you want in distribution, automation, and energy storage before I go to my next one? All right, well then, here's one that we just talked about. Brad, you just talked about a use case, right? The use case of capital deferment. And a lot of people talk about this use case. They throw it around like it's a term everybody should know. But can you guys help define the word use case or the concept of use case for the people here in the audience?
I'll jump in here, David. Use case, we think of it as application, right? What's the application for that particular technology, right? If your use case says, I need to help with outage restoration, right? Or to decrease the number of minutes or duration the customer has an outage, that's a use case. If in fact I want to use energy storage to reduce the peak at a facility, right? Some people call it peak demand management, right? It's just a use case or the application. So if you'll remove use case from our vocabulary and put in application, that's what it's talking about.
Excellent, good. All right, and one of the specific use cases or applications that Jamie mentioned is, and we found during Hurricane Sandy, is what happens when you have a DER, distributed energy resource, and it doesn't work when there's no signal from the utility, right? And so people talk about having a grid-forming asset. Can one of you describe what a grid-forming asset is for the audience here? Alex, looks like you.
Yes, it is that generator that has the ability to offer stability for other loads and generators in that microgrid or defined system to latch onto. It is the entity, the generating entity, that provides voltage signal and stability to do just that. You may be aware that most inverters deployed today, solar inverters, depend on a utility's infinite bus. Although folks in CNI,
We're getting towards the
commercial and industrial segments of our utility customer base, those may not realize that their dependency on the infinite bus that a utility offer, those inverters do rely on a utility's grid forming presence. When you don't have central power, like in the case of a storm, you need to have in that microgrid some grid forming entity, and it would be that device that I just described.
I was worried we wouldn't get there, but we got to the best jargon of them all, which is microgrid, right? Which is true. I mean, we talk about this is the term I hear all the time, from policymakers, from customers themselves saying we want to live in a microgrid, we want the District of Columbia has a whole microgrid strategy, New York has one. What does that actually mean?
So I'll take a crack at that one. So if you think about the generation infrastructure, the transmission infrastructure, the distribution infrastructure collectively, we call it the electric grid, right? And when you start talking about microgrids, all you've done is either take a subset of that grid, or if you're talking about like University of Texas down the street, you could utilize just that campus as its own electric grid. You'll have some generation on campus. You'll certainly have load in the form of buildings and lighting and air conditioning. And that's all you've done is you've taken the larger grid and just brought it down into smaller chunks.
So that's funny because I often hear the definition of, and I agree with you, and we work with UT and around this topic in particular. It's one of our first certified projects for this.
Very good. I like that. That was good. We got
Longhorns, University of Texas at Austin, the Longhorns. I have heard that the definition of microgrid is actually islandability, which in and of itself is a.
And so now we're fixing to combat
Oh,
two
we're
terms,
fixing. I like it.
microgrid. Yeah, fixing to, there you go. There's another term out there called DERMS, right? Distributed Energy Resource Management System, right? The difference between DERMS and microgrid is the ability to island.
Right.
So
Now, what did that just mean, right? Think of it as independence, right? From a utility perspective, or at least Oncor's perspective, we think a microgrid can work with the larger grid, but if it needed to, it can work independent of the grid. And a lot of people associate, a microgrid with that independence, right? But there's other software programs out there that just says, you know what, I want to optimize the distributed energy resources I've got at my facility. And so that's not necessarily a microgrid, that's a DERMS platform, Distributed Energy Resource Management System. And so keep with me on this one. A microgrid has a DERMS application, but all DERMS are not microgrids.
And we know that DERMS must be a software application platform because it's 5 letters.
There you go.
It has an S.
Yeah, exactly.
Platform,
Exactly.
right.
So, okay, good. And we have 5 minutes left. So in the last 5 minutes, what I'd like to ask my panel to do is to very carefully walk over to the wall over there and pick off 6 of the placards, and then make your way carefully back up here on
tell you
stage.
what, can we let this Mr. Childs?
Oh, you just want Mr. Childs to do it?
Yeah,
All
Mr.
right.
Childs, just grab 6 of those and hand them to Jamie.
Hand him to Jamie. That was good. That was good. Randomly take 6. There you go.
If I get a Z, an X, a Y.
All right,
Make
so
stock symbols.
One of the things that Michael talked about as we were going through here was optimization, right? And that's another thing that comes up with microgrids all the time. So I know that again, a lot of the panel here has some optimization experience. While we're sorting through the different letters here, would you talk about optimization, Alex?
Sure, happy to do that. I will highlight a project that we completed with David's team. Find a vendor.
What a coincidence! I had no idea that was going to happen.
So, for example, a couple of our use cases that were just defined what they are involve optimizing for CO2 emissions. Carbon dioxide emissions, or cost, or both. So as a use case,
Which we've already defined, so that's okay to use.
Yep.
That's good. Yep.
So
application.
So that would be there will be one example of optimization in the context of distribution automation, or even in the context of a microgrid. It is, I can repeat it once more, and that is, let's go with it. Optimize to achieve optimum carbon dioxide emission, optimum cost of produced energy, or a combination of both. And by the way our reality is in the United States, both of them are mutually exclusive. You cannot have both. Either you optimize for cost or for cheaper sources that are releasing.
And when he says carbon dioxide optimization, what he really means is reduction, right? We're not trying to produce more necessarily. It would be the introduction of green energy type resources like photovoltaics or wind or some other resource. All right, Jamie, what do you have for us? She's shaking her head going, Mr. Childs really did not do me any favors here.
It's pretty hard. I threw out the X.
So we have D, V.
Well, one thing I learned today is F.
F, okay.
F often has failure, or there was one other word we used, fault, or, well, failure, fault, I think, and it's F, so.
All right, good.
Bad things. D for distribution.
Oh, okay.
Or demand. Fault, demand. Demand false.
All right.
Uh,
All right, so we have B, A, and V.
we've got an A here.
Oh, wait, there you go. You got one right there. Just hold it up. Hold it up right there. There we go. That was good.
For Food and Drug Administration?
Completely an accident. Completely an accident. And with that, I think you can see that even if we hold up random letters, we can make up a meaningful acronym that has absolutely no connection to our industry whatsoever in that case. But nonetheless, look, we've come to the end of our time with you. I hope that you've learned something. At the same time, I hope you had a good time. What I would really appreciate is if you'd join me in giving a big hand to our panel, because this was really hard. I mean, you can tell how hard it is to talk without using acronyms. So good. I hope this helps you, and I want you to have a great show, and we'll see you again next year. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, David.